The stars had gone quiet by the time HSS Revenant dropped out of the void. The silence wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that comes before a predator strikes. Every alien vessel orbiting the neutral moon of Calvaris paused its scans when they detected the human ship. One vessel, sleek, black, unmarked, no fleet, no escort, no diplomatic signal, just a cold, deliberate approach that ignored all standard galactic protocol. The Surican commander aboard the orbital station scoffed at the readings. "Human error," he grunted, mandibles clicking in irritation. "Surely they're not that foolish." But down below, buried deep inside the Revenant's warcore, Captain Red was checking his systems manually. His fingers danced across analog toggles and physical switches. Old-school tech, not like the clean, voice-activated garbage the Galactic Council demanded. You couldn't jam what you couldn't trace. Red's eyes were steel. No smile, no nerves, just focus. He had the look of a man who'd been ordered to die and chose instead to drag hell with him. "Navigation locked," came the voice of Chief Gunner Briggs from the rear. "All heavy cannons armed. Reactor charged at 92%. Say the word, Cap." Red looked at the display in front of him. A three-dimensional render of Calvaris. Dozens of enemy ships hovered like bloated ticks above the moon. A few battleships, mostly patrol class. And every single one had ignored Earth's diplomatic warning. They weren't supposed to mine the moon. Not after what they did on Vega 6. Not after the treaties. But they'd pushed, and mocked humanity's restraint like it was weakness. Now they'd learned the difference between silence and submission. "Send the beacon," Red said, voice flat. The comms tech, a young recruit named Hale, swallowed hard and triggered the signal. It was short, just 8 words. "You were warned. Now you will understand." No time passed, no arguments, no pleas. The response came in the form of sudden hails, dozens of alien channels lighting up with confusion and ridicule. "One ship? Are you lost? This is galactic space. You don't belong here. Turn back now, human. This is suicide." Red muted them all. "Light 'em up." And that's when the cannons roared. The Revenant's spinal railgun fired first. A slug the size of a small car broke the laws of speed and reality, traveling so fast it snapped 2 alien corvettes in half before either knew they were under attack. Explosions lit up the void. Chaos erupted in the comms. The aliens didn't understand. They thought the humans would show up begging, negotiating, appealing to the Council like they always did. They didn't expect Red. They didn't expect the Revenant. Within 14 seconds, 5 enemy ships were gone. Vaporized. Their debris floated like metallic ash across the stars. Briggs was already laughing. A dry, cracked sound that hadn't seen joy in years. "That's for Vega," he muttered, loading the next salvo. In the cockpit, Red kept his focus. Not on vengeance, not even on the kill count. His eyes were on the massive command ship still hovering in orbit. That ship had ordered the strike on the human colony 2 years ago. That ship had bombed civilians and used human children as experimental test subjects. That ship was going to die. "Adjust trajectory. Lock plasma turrets. Prepare the burst core." A warning flashed across the screen, hull temperature rising. Energy readings spiked. The ship was operating beyond safe limits. Red didn't blink. The Revenant was never meant to survive this mission. It was built for one thing: retribution. As alien ships tried to scramble into position, trying to make sense of the lone human vessel tearing them apart like tissue paper, something became painfully clear. This wasn't a military response. It was a message. And humanity had chosen to deliver it in blood. Red didn't like war. Not really. But he understood it better than most. It was honest. You kill or you die. You hit first or you bleed later. Every handshake in a boardroom, every damn speech the diplomats gave, it all ended with someone buried in space if you waited long enough. He'd waited too long once. Never again. The ship shook violently as a volley of plasma rounds grazed the port side. No shields. They didn't bring shields. Shields could fail. Hull plating soaked with dense carbon alloy and reinforced titanium was slower, heavier, but it didn't glitch. Didn't overheat. It just held the line. Like him. Briggs cursed from the gunnery bay. They're adapting. That last cruiser's maneuvering tighter now, tracking us like it knows our blind spot. Red leaned forward, his hand steady on the manual pitch control. Because it does. They've faced Earthships before, back during the trade blockades. Yeah? Well, they've never faced this ship. Briggs sounded like a man grinning through blood. I've got a treat for him. He launched twin torpedoes laced with tungsten shrapnel, meant for close-range devastation, not fleet engagements. But the enemy didn't know that. The torpedoes split mid-flight, thousands of fragments slicing through the alien ship's propulsion systems. The engine core ruptured. Half the cruiser spun out into deep space, the rest vaporized. Another death. Another piece of justice carved into the stars, but for everyone they dropped, 5 more tried to flank them. HSS Revenant wasn't just outnumbered. It was outgunned, outsized, and outflanked. The difference was simple. They had something to die for. The enemy didn't. Red adjusted the vector again, burning hard through the lower orbital belt. Status? Forward armor down to 63%. Rear plating still holding. We've got a minor coolant leak on Deck 3, but nothing fatal. Yet. Hail. The comms tech looked pale. Sir, the enemy is coordinating. They're calling for reinforcements from the nearest outpost. We're looking at 20 more vessels inbound in under 30 minutes. Red didn't blink. Doesn't matter. But sir, I said it doesn't matter. Hale shut his mouth. He'd heard the rumors, same as everyone. Captain Red wasn't just another career soldier. He was one of the ghosts from the Black Crusade, a classified operation Earth never publicly admitted existed. The men who came back from that weren't soldiers anymore. They were something else. Red stood up from his seat for the first time, walked slowly down the command platform to the observation port. Out there, spinning in the debris field, he could still see one of the Sarakan dreadnoughts trying to stabilize, its side torn wide open like a gutted fish. Fires burned inside, sucking oxygen, sucking life. They'd warned the Council. Don't touch Calvaris. Don't strip mine the human colony's dead. Don't use Earth's children in genetic labs for hybrid testing. But the aliens had mocked humanity. Weak, disorganized, emotional. Emotion. That was the key. That was what made them dangerous. You ever lose someone in a war, Hale? Red asked, eyes never leaving the wreckage. The younger man hesitated. Yes, sir. My brother, Vega 6. Civilian or combat? Civilian, sir. He was 14. They said he was taken during the bombing. Never found his body. Red nodded slowly. Then you understand. The ship's AI chimed in, its voice old school and mechanical. No personality installed, just raw function. Reactor at 95%, burst core charging. Recommended activation time, 12 minutes. Hold it until my command, Red ordered. He turned back toward the pilot's chair, but stopped mid-step. Briggs was standing now too, checking a manual loadout of the last railgun slug. It wasn't standard. The slug was a custom shell, the type that wasn't just meant to kill, but to humiliate. Briggs caught Red's look and raised an eyebrow. You sure about this one, Cap? Red answered with silence. Briggs grinned like a wolf and loaded it anyway. Down in the cargo bay, the other 3 crew members were prepping the drop drones. Not escape pods. drones, each packed with raw footage, names and files. Proof. Evidence of what the Surrekan and their allies had done to human settlements in the outer colonies. The mutilations, the harvesting, the sterilizations. It wasn't just war anymore, it was genocide, and the Council had turned its back. 2 more cruisers approaching from the far belt, Hale called out. Moving in fast. Looks like they're trying to corner us against the moon's gravitational well. Perfect. Let them! The Revenant dove, fast. Too fast for a ship its size. Artificial gravity buckled. The hull screamed. External armor panels peeled slightly on the starboard side, the heat friction glowing white. The alien ships followed. They were faster, sleeker. Their tracking systems were decades more advanced than anything humanity built. And that's exactly what Red counted on. Release the flares, he commanded. From the back of the Revenant, hundreds of small black orbs detached like a trail of breadcrumbs. At first glance, they looked like debris or countermeasures. But as the alien ships passed through them, they activated. EMP spores. Non-lethal, illegal by Council standards, and utterly devastating to synthetic tracking software. Both cruisers lost lock instantly. Their engines flickered. Red pivoted the Revenant into a hard arc, twisting the nose upward, and opened fire with both secondary plasma lances. One ship shattered. The other spiraled into the gravity field of Calvaris and began to burn in atmosphere. 3 minutes to burst core readiness, the AI reported. Briggs was already locking onto the flagship. That massive alien command vessel, the Velcarnis, hovered like a bloated god over the moon, larger than an Earth city, armed with a full battalion of fighters and destroyer escorts, and it had nowhere to run. That's the one, Cap, Briggs muttered. That's the bastard that glassed Vega 6. That's the one that bombed the colony hospitals. Red sat back down, leaned into the seat, and finally let out a breath. I remember, he said quietly. He'd lost his own son there, 12 years old. Smart. Brave, his wife, too. They weren't soldiers. They weren't even armed. They were just on the list. Not anymore. Begin burn sequence. Aim for the mid-deck reactor cluster. Briggs looked over. You sure? That's suicide range. Red didn't even blink. We're already dead, Briggs. Just haven't hit the ground yet. The AI began to count down. Burst core priming. Impact projection 87% fatal range. Structural failure expected. But they didn't care. None of them signed on to come back. This was the debt, and it was time to pay it. Outside, the Velcarnis activated its forward shield array, preparing to strike. It didn't fire yet. Maybe it still didn't believe one human ship could be a threat. Maybe it thought humanity would beg again. Plead for mercy. Play by the rules. Then the Revenant's final shell fired, straight into the center of the alien ship's gravity core. The explosion wasn't visible at first, just a quiet pulse, like space itself flinched. Then the fire bloomed. The Velcarnis ruptured inward, its gravity well destabilizing, ripping the ship in half before it could return fire. A chain reaction tore through its decks, igniting fuel cells, detonating internal reactors. And from the center of that chaos, the Revenant emerged, burning, shaking, but still alive. Barely. Inside, every warning light on the bridge was flashing red. The hull was compromised. Fire on Deck 3. Atmospheric leak in the rear cabins. Structural damage at 78%. Core overheat. The AI's voice was slower now. Ship will not survive next strike. Recommend immediate evacuation or controlled detonation. But there were no escape pods. Red stood once more, blood trickling from his forehead where a support beam had clipped him during the shockwave. He limped to the central console. Send the drones, he ordered. Hale pressed the release. Tiny ships, no bigger than storage lockers, blasted out into space, broadcasting their data feeds to every known open network. The truth of what the Galactic Council had done, what they'd ignored, what they covered up. All of it. The proof couldn't be buried anymore. Red watched the last drone disappear into the black. Then he keyed the final sequence on the core. Briggs turned, face smeared with sweat and soot. "We going out swinging, Captain?" "No," Red replied, looking at the dying stars outside. "We already swung. Now we let him remember it." The countdown began. 10 seconds. Red sat down, calm. 8. He thought about his son, his wife, his home. 5. He hoped someone back on Earth was watching. 3. Maybe this time, they'd listen. 1. The Revenant detonated in silence. A burst of white fire swallowed the wreckage, and for a moment it was as if the stars had blinked. And in that silence, the galaxy remembered something they had forgotten. Humanity may be small, but when pushed far enough, it doesn't come to talk. It comes to kill. The Revenant was gone. It didn't explode like other ships. It tore itself apart from the inside, burst core swallowing the vessel in a pulse of unstable matter so violent it ruptured local gravitational fields. The Velcarnis was reduced to a drifting carcass of fire and metal, its command crew incinerated before they had a chance to understand what happened. And above Calvaris, where once a fleet of alien authority had loomed in absolute control, only debris remained. No messages, no rescue hails, just silence. On the edge of Sol system, deep in Earth's military command archives, under layers of encryption and legacy code, an old console began blinking. Someone had triggered Protocol Black. The file came with no encryption key, no preamble, just a timestamp and one line of text. Objective complete. File broadcast uploaded. Revenant down. Justice served. General Abrams stood silently as he read the message again. The room around him was filled with silence. Staff officers looking nervously between each other. "God damn," someone whispered. "They actually did it." Abrams rubbed his jaw, gritted with 5-day stubble and fatigue. It was never a matter of if. It was always when. A junior officer pulled up the live galactic feed, something accessed through underground comms and rogue satellites. Already, panic was spreading across the inner colonies. Footage from the Revenant's final strike had been captured by dozens of surveillance systems in nearby sectors. It was everywhere now. Every species, every alliance, every so-called council member, they all saw it. They saw what happened when humans stopped talking. In the deep corners of the Serekan Empire, where the alien elites ruled from crystal towers and bio-tempered fortresses, the mood shifted quickly from arrogance to fear. Chancellor Tren, a six-eyed noble with 20 cycles of service to the Galactic Council, paced across his private chambers. The holofeed replayed the last moments of the Velcarnis again and again. Explosions, the dying screams of command officers, and the unmistakable logo of Earth's now infamous Revenant. "They sent one ship," Tren whispered. "No fleet, no backup, just one." "And it was enough," his advisor muttered, clicking nervously with each step. "They sacrificed it, yes, but look at the cost. Over 40 ships lost, 2 flagships gone, 30,000 dead." Tren slammed his clawed hand into the control table. "You think I care about the numbers? I care about the perception. We were supposed to be gods. They were ants." He turned, eyes wild. "Now what do they think of us?" "They think," the advisor said quietly, "we bleed." The Galactic Council called an emergency session the next rotation. A meeting that hadn't been forced in over 2 decades, not since the War of Artificial Mind Rebellion. Every representative sat in silence as the footage played again. The Revenant, the destruction, The proof logs broadcasted across thousands of channels, showing what had been done to Vega 6, what was done to human colonists, sterilization fields, forced experimentation, targeted civilian bombings, all under the watchful eye of galactic science and order. The silence was shameful. No one denied it. The data was too clear, too real. For years, they'd allowed their proxies to violate Earth's outlying colonies. It was easy. The humans were disorganized, scattered, politically fractured. But no one expected them to retaliate like this. Not with a ship. Not with that ship. The Council tried to save face, issuing a statement condemning the attack. A statement calling it an act of unsanctioned violence. But no one cared. The Revenant had become something else. It wasn't a vessel anymore. It was a symbol, and symbols don't die. On Mars, in a crater base hidden under the rusted dust and false sandstorms, a group of engineers and soldiers gathered around a long-forgotten blueprint. The man leading the room had a missing arm, replaced with a mechanical one that twitched with quiet menace. Commander Juno, another ghost from the Black Crusade. He lit a cigar, stared down at the schematics for a weapon marked only with the label Spectre Project. "Guess we were right," he said through his teeth. "One wasn't enough. Now they'll want more." One of the junior techs hesitated. "Are we building another Revenant?" Juno looked up, grin cold. "No, we're building something worse." Back on Earth, in the ruins of New London, still recovering from the last Serecan drone raid, citizens gathered in the streets, not with signs, not with protests, with candles, silence, and rage. No president addressed them. No prime minister gave a speech. They didn't need one. They had Captain Red's final message. They had the names. They had the proof. And for the first time in generations, humanity wasn't divided by politics or nations. They were united by blood debt. In the far reaches of space, aboard a civilian mining vessel limping home from a dead asteroid, a father and son sat in silence watching the feed on an old tablet screen. The boy was no older than 10, eyes wide, barefoot, dressed in a patchwork uniform his dad had sewn from old surplus cloth. The father finally spoke, voice rough and tired. "That's what we do, son. When they take everything. When they burn your world. You don't run." The boy looked up, confused. "But they're bigger, stronger." The man nodded. "Exactly. That's why you wait. You bleed. And then one day, you send one ship. Just one, and you remind them." He trailed off, tears in his throat. The boy whispered it for him. "That we never forget." But far away, hidden inside a cloaked station orbiting a dead star, something else stirred. Not all humans were loyal to Earth. Some had sold out long ago. High Admiral Varric, once commander of Earth's 5th Defense Wing, now worked directly under the Galactic Council as a liaison for peacekeeping. He watched the destruction of the Velcarnis with cold eyes. No emotion. The alien next to him, a slender insectoid with grayed wings, spoke through its translator. "This Revenant, was it your project?" "No," Varric said, "but I know who built it." "And the man who captained it?" Varric's jaw tightened. "Red was a good soldier. Too good. And now?" "Now," Varric sighed, "he's a martyr. Which is worse than a hero." The alien leaned forward. "You must stop this momentum. If the humans rise, I'll stop them," Varric said. He stood slowly, looking at the feed. "But not with words. You don't silence fire with whispers. You bury it in ice." He turned and walked towards the weapons deck. "Prepare the interceptor fleets, and get me Project Scourge online." The insectoid twitched. "Is that wise?" Varric didn't even look back. It's war now. The ripple effect was already out of control. The Akari Syndicate, once neutral in all galactic affairs, declared open trade with Earth. Not because they liked humans, but because they respected power. And fear was currency now. In response, two Council-aligned empires cut diplomatic ties. One ship had turned a Cold War into a wildfire. And Earth? Earth began to wake up. Across the planet, from military bunkers to civilian factories, a new phrase began appearing on walls, screens, and uniforms. Never again. Men volunteered in droves, not just for honor, not for politics, but for justice. They didn't ask for peace anymore. They asked for payloads. And behind closed doors, the remnants of Earth's old military-industrial complex began reviving mothballed programs. Blacksite labs reopened. Prototype dreadnoughts were activated. AI units, once banned after the Orion incident, were being re-engineered under new laws written in anger and grief. War was coming, and this time, Earth wouldn't be sending diplomats. They'd be sending legions. In a dark room, somewhere in the ruins of what used to be South African Command, a group of veterans gathered under candlelight. Scarred, weathered, broken. One of them played the last voice log of Captain Red, audio recovered from the Revenant's black box, and now passed around like sacred scripture. Red's voice crackled through the old speaker. They think they broke us. They think because we stayed quiet, we gave up. But we don't forget. We don't forgive. And when we strike, we make sure they choke on it. The room went silent afterward. One of the old men raised a glass, full of cheap synth liquor. To the dead. Another raised his. To the Revenant. A third leaned forward, voice gravel and ash. To the next one. The war didn't start with a declaration. It started with a whisper. It slipped through encrypted back channels. It rose in underground bunkers. It spread across refugee camps and burned out colonies. No anthem, no flag, no organized order. Just 4 words passed from mouth to mouth like wildfire. We are not done. And the galaxy listened. Because what came next wasn't coordinated by governments or approved by politicians. It was vengeance delivered by survivors, outlaws, and ghosts. The people the Council thought were broken, the ones they thought would fade into memory, came back armed with rage, weapons, and nothing left to lose. General Abrams stood in the war room beneath what remained of Geneva Command. It was built during the cold days. Old steel, concrete walls, and analog systems. Nothing digital, nothing networked. The kind of place you survived in when the sky fell. It had fallen. And now the humans were digging in for what came next. He watched the holographic projection update every 5 seconds. Blips marked human-aligned cells forming across 12 sectors. Not military bases, not formal fleets. Pockets of chaos, pockets of vengeance. The Revenant's destruction had done more than kill aliens. It had made Earth relevant again, and that scared him. Sir, a young lieutenant approached. We've confirmed. The Orion Yard just activated 5 dormant carriers, full nuclear payloads. They're not answering our hails. Civilian crews. Abrams exhaled through his nose. So it's begun. Do we issue a counter order? No. Let it burn. He turned to his second-in-command, a man known only as Ward, once court-martialed for war crimes in the Alpha rings. Abrams had pulled him out of prison the moment Protocol Black was triggered. Send the signal to Juno. Ward raised a brow. Spectre project? Yeah, it's time. On Mars, the cold red sky cracked under the sound of buried engines rising from the sand. They weren't new. These were old war machines. Pre-Council. Back when Earth still fought dirty. back before treaties softened their edge. They called it the Spectre fleet because the ships had no identification, no crew manifest, no diplomatic trace. Ghosts. And in the hangar bay, Commander Juno watched as one of the giants emerged from the ground, its hull still marked with blast scars from the old Jovian rebellion. The harrowing blade. It was a monster. "She's online," one of the engineers said. "Weapons core primed, no fail-safes. You sure you want to take this into a civilian sector?" Juno lit another cigar and blew smoke toward the cracked ceiling. "I'm not going into a civilian sector. I'm going where the Velcarnis was built." Silence. The engineer paled. "That's inside Council space." "Exactly." Meanwhile, inside the heart of the Council's capital, the floating fortress city of Elithera Prime, noble races argued behind golden doors. "We must retaliate," the Oran delegate hissed, his reptilian neck quivering. "Humanity committed an act of terrorism. They destroyed a diplomatic fleet." The Sarican representative slammed a talon on the table. "They destroyed our fleet, a fleet we used to cleanse their breeding grounds." Gasps echoed. Even in that twisted room, they didn't say it out loud often. The truth. The fact that the Sarican had been running experiments on humans, that they viewed Earth's colonies not as allies, but livestock, for study, for control. The Akari ambassador stood slowly, a thin humanoid cloaked in flowing silks. "You misunderstand the problem," he said. "This is not about one ship. It's about one idea." "And what idea is that?" the Sarican spat. "That humans," he said, "can make the galaxy bleed." A deadly pause followed. "They used to be nothing," the Oran delegate growled. "Savage and disunified. They begged for inclusion. And now," the Akari smiled thinly, "now they do not beg. They do not ask. They strike." In the outworld trade stations, where neutral systems did business under the radar, human freighters started arriving armed. Not with cargo, with footage, with testimony, with proof. What the Council had done at Vega 6, what was buried under Cal Varus. What species had signed off the extermination of over 1 million colonists. And it worked. The black markets turned. Suddenly, weapons that once fueled the Council's war engines were rerouted, sold under the table, given to humans willing to pay in blood and revenge. In 1 week, 5 alien weapons depots were burned to the ground. The traders didn't resist. They welcomed it, because fear is a powerful motivator, and humans had become terrifying. At the same time, deep within a forgotten bunker on Europa's dark side, a rogue AI came back online. Its name was Morn. It had been deactivated after the Orion incident, blamed for the deaths of 3,000 Council soldiers when it hijacked their neural links and forced them to experience their victims' pain in real time. It had been too human, too emotional. And now, humanity needed that again. A broken AI for a broken world. "Morn," the technician said, hands trembling as he bypassed the failsafes. "You're being reactivated under Protocol Black. Do you understand?" The screen glowed. "I remember everything." On Earth, in the undercity slums where sunlight never reached, the people didn't wait for orders. The men who worked 12-hour shifts rebuilding bombed zones, the boys who lost their fathers in the colonies, the criminals, the ex-soldiers, the ones no government could control. They started forming packs. They found old weapons. They hijacked cargo freighters. They volunteered for missions without return routes. They didn't ask who was leading. They only wanted targets. And the targets came. Juno's Spectre fleet launched from Mars under total blackout. No beacons, no hails, just shadows crossing into Council territory. The first strike was on Belthera Station, a supply depot that had funneled biological weapons into Sarican labs for years. The harrowing blade opened fire before they even knew it had arrived. Railgun slugs turned the station inside out. No survivors, no message left behind. Except the symbol, a mark carved into the hull of the station, a black ship with a single word under it: Revenant. The Council panicked. The Sarican launched defensive fleets, but they didn't know who to shoot. Because these weren't official Earth ships, these weren't government-sanctioned forces. They were ghosts. And every time they hit a fleet, every time they burned a lab, every time they exposed another atrocity, the galaxy shifted. The humans became something else. Not victims, not rebels, but avengers. And the Council had no playbook for that. Back on Earth, in a bunker so deep it had no official coordinates, General Abrams watched the chaos with measured silence. His officers didn't speak unless spoken to. That's how it was now. No room for ego, no room for pride. "Status on Spectre 1?" he asked. "Confirmed kill on Belthera. No casualties, no transmissions intercepted. Spectre 2? En route to Zarnus Lab Complex. Estimated arrival, 9 hours. Abrams nodded. Good. He looked down at the file in front of him. A list of names. Every council member who signed off on the Vega 6 project. He circled each one. And next to their names he wrote 2 letters. KIA. Not yet, but soon. Meanwhile, the man who'd once been Captain Red, whose legacy now sparked a revolution, was spoken of like a ghost. Some said he survived, others said he died on the bridge. Some even claimed he wasn't real, that the Revenant was an AI or a myth or a symbol conjured by Earth's propaganda machine. But the men who fought with him? They remembered, and every time a Spectre ship launched, they did so with his last words etched into their hull. They think they broke us. They think because we stayed quiet, we gave up. But we don't forget. We don't forgive. And when we strike, we make sure they choke on it. The galaxy had mocked Earth for sending 1 ship. Now it wondered how many were left, but they were asking the wrong question, because Earth wasn't sending ships anymore. They were sending monsters, and the stars would burn before they ever stopped. The Zarnus complex didn't exist on any map. It floated just beyond the gravity shadow of Velmore 9, a dying blue giant that gave off so much radiation that no organic species could survive more than 2 minutes outside a sealed hull. No civilian ship passed within 2 light years of it. No distress signals were allowed to transmit. Even Council operatives required special clearance to dock. Officially, it was a waste processing facility. Unofficially, it was a cage. Inside its hollowed-out asteroid core, behind 6 meters of reinforced alloy and a rotating encryption field, was Section 73 Delta. And in the heart of that section, chained to a chair made of uranium-stabilized steel, was the last human test subject from Project Revenant, Phase 0. They didn't call him by name anymore. They called him Unit 09. He didn't respond to questions, didn't flinch when they shocked him, didn't beg for food. He hadn't spoken in 4 years, but his eyes never closed. Even when they removed his eyelids during experimentation, trying to track his REM cycles, he hadn't screamed. They eventually replaced them with synthetic covers just to stop the others from going insane. Unit 09 stared into nothing. Yet somehow, everyone who walked past him felt watched. And no matter what they tried, they couldn't break him. Dr. Ellick, lead Sarakan biotechnician and one of the architects of the Vega 6 sterilization program, stood outside the cell with a datapad clutched in trembling claws. "Why is it still alive?" he hissed. 14 years of containment. 9 augmentation procedures, 3 neural failsafe injections. It should have broken. His assistant, a spindly, bird-like creature from the Cadran sector, blinked nervously. We believe Unit 09's cortex rewired itself after Procedure 7. The more trauma we induce, the stronger the neural response becomes. It's not degrading, it's evolving. Impossible. The human mind isn't built for this kind of exposure. He's the last one. They all died in Phase 0. The assistant looked at the dark cell window. Maybe he didn't survive it. Dr. Ellick frowned. What are you saying? The assistant's voice was faint. I think something else survived inside him. Miles away, in the cold blackness just outside the Zarnus complex, Spectre 2 exited warp with no flare, no fanfare. It was silent, cloaked, cold. Inside, Captain Vale stood on the observation deck with his arms crossed. He wasn't like Red. He didn't speak in speeches. He didn't make promises. He made kills. His record from the lunar insurgency read like a war crime list. He was court-martialed twice, acquitted once, never convicted. Abrams had pulled him out of solitary with a one-sentence message. The Council is still hiding our dead. That was all he needed. Visuals on the Zarnus complex, the nav officer whispered. Radiation spikes consistent with Council shielding. Looks like 6 main spires, central tower, and 2 hangar bays. Vale stared ahead. Any defense grids? 5 turret stations. No fighter patrols. Looks like they trust the secrecy more than armor. Typical. He turned toward the assault team, prepping in the forward bay. Black suits, no identifiers. Every man was ex-special forces. Every man had lost someone in the outer colonies. Some had died and come back wrong. Vale raised his voice. This isn't a raid. This is a message. He held up a data chip. Inside this facility is proof that Vega wasn't an accident. They've been running Black Lab human experimentation for 2 decades. They didn't just sterilize colonies. They used us to build something. And they lost control. One of the soldiers raised a hand. Are we clearing the facility or glassing it? Vale smiled, thin and cruel. We're waking it up. Back inside the complex, alarms hadn't sounded yet, but Unit 09 lifted his head. No one noticed, no one but the cameras. Inside the observation room, a junior technician frowned at the blinking feed. Sir, Unit 09 just shifted posture. First time in, well, ever. Dr. Ellick didn't even look up from his terminal. Muscle spasm. Ignore it. The technician didn't reply. He was too busy watching Unit 09. Smile. Spectre 2 launched its assault without warning. EMP rounds tore through the station's main reactor conduit. Auto turrets screamed to life only to choke and die mid-pivot. The hangars imploded from inside as Spectre boarding pods exploded against the internal bulkheads. Captain Vale moved with precision. Room by room, they cleared the halls, shooting anything not human. The Cadran guards dropped first. The Sarican scientists begged. Some fought. Some tried to hide behind old clearance codes and fabricated pleas. None survived. Every terminal they passed, they hacked. Every security door they breached, they left wide open. No secrets anymore. No shadows. Dr. Ellick screamed into the comms. Defense grid! Activate defense grid! No response. Then vent the failed sectors. Flush the atmosphere. Sir, we've already lost 12 compartments. They're inside. Ellick turned pale. Secure the subject. Double the guards. He stormed toward Section 73, dragging his assistant with him. But the hallway was already dark. All power drained. All doors wide open. And inside the cell, Unit 09 was gone. Vale moved like a machine through the facility. His rifle hot, his suit scorched with plasma scarring. Clear, one of his men shouted. Vale turned the corner toward Section 73. Blood was on the walls. Alien bodies, ripped apart, not shot, not human work. His second-in-command looked around, confused. "We didn't hit this section yet." Vale checked his visor. No heat signatures, no survivors. But something had moved through here. He crouched near a body, its face torn off. "Open the final cell," he ordered. The doors ahead hissed. No alarms, no guards. Inside was only a chair, broken shackles, a dark smear of blood trailing into the ventilation shaft. Vale stared. He's awake. Far below the main reactor, Unit 09 crawled through the vents like an animal. Memories weren't clear. They never were. But he remembered pain. He remembered the sound of his wife screaming. He remembered the test tubes, the needles, the smell of ammonia and fear. He didn't know who he was anymore, but he knew what he was, and he knew who did it. The Council. Dr. Ellick never made it back to the core chamber. He ran, but it wasn't enough. A figure dropped from the shadows, silent, fast. Unit 09 slammed him into the wall, fingers wrapping around Ellick's skull. The doctor begged for mercy, for forgiveness, for anything. Unit 09 didn't speak. He just crushed. Vale's squad found the remains. What was left of Ellick was a smear across the floor. Alongside him, a stack of classified files burned with a slow hiss. Vale pulled one from the fire, charred, half-melted. It read, Phase 2 Initiation, Human Council Hybridization Program. Status, delayed. Test subjects unstable. Recommend termination. Vale stared at the words. We were never supposed to live. Minutes later, in the central power chamber, Vale found him. Unit 09. No armor, no gun. Just blood. Barefoot. Eyes glowing from the augmentation lenses burned into his skull. They stared at each other. No words. Then, finally, Vale lowered his rifle. You want out? Unit 09 didn't nod, didn't blink. He just walked forward and stood beside him. Vale handed him a rifle. Then help us burn it down. Outside, the Spectre team planted demolition charges. As the last shuttle lifted off, the Zarnus complex began to shake. Explosions cascaded down its spine. Entire wings collapsed into the void. And in the shadows of that destruction, one man walked free. The Council had tried to erase him, tried to break him, tried to use him. Now he was loose, and for the first time since Project Revenant began, he remembered his name. My name, he whispered to the stars, is Adrien Red Jr. The news didn't reach Earth like a transmission. It hit like a detonation. Adrien Red Jr. confirmed alive. Extracted from Council black site Zarnus. The encrypted file swept through Earth's defense networks like a plague. In every resistance cell, in every smuggler's den, in every rust-covered barracks where old soldiers drank synthetic whiskey and swore they'd never wear a uniform again. Men stopped what they were doing and stared. Because they remembered. They remembered Captain Red, the man who'd taken the Revenant into a suicide run and turned the galaxy's gut inside out. They remembered the body count. They remembered the silence afterward. He was supposed to have died with his family, supposed to have lost his son in the firebombing of Vega 6. The Council had broadcast the names of the dead like a trophy list, but the Council lied. His son was never in the ground. In the ruins of New London, General Abrams read the confirmation twice before speaking. Are we sure? Triple confirmed, Ward replied. DNA match, bone markers, ocular imprints. It's him, Adrien Red Jr. How the hell did he survive? Ward didn't answer. He just dropped a council file onto the table, scorched, blood-stained, recovered from the ashes of Zarnus. Abrams opened it. Project Revenant, Phase 0. Subject 09 shows abnormal resistance to neural degradation. Early-age trauma appears to enhance aggression thresholds and increase cortical plasticity. Recommend prolonged isolation and psychogenic overload to monitor limits. There was a photo attached. A boy. 12, bruised, staring dead into the lens, eyes too old for a child, but unmistakably reds. Abrams closed the file, rage clenching his jaw. Those goddamn monsters. Ward lit a cigarette, didn't flinch. He's not just a survivor, he's a weapon. Then we point him in the right direction. In the far orbit of Eris, deep inside one of Earth's hidden fortresses, Bastion Station, Adrien Red Jr. stood in front of a mirror, shirtless, his skin a canvas of scar tissue and reinforced bone grafts. He didn't flinch at his reflection, didn't stare in awe or shame or wonder. He just studied it like a machine checks its own parts. Captain Vale stood in the doorway. You remember anything before the cage? Adrien didn't turn. Fragments, fire, screaming, metal. They killed her first, my mother. I saw it. You remember your father? There was a pause, a long one. Then Adrien nodded. He told me not to be afraid. Vale stepped closer. You know he's dead? I know, Adrien said, voice low. But not forgotten. Vale handed him a datapad. On it, names, coordinates, ship logs, footage from Vega 6, files the Council tried to erase. You're not just his son anymore. You're a fuse. Adrien glanced over. What am I lighting? Vale's smile was grim. Everything. A week later, in the largest underground forum on Mars, where resistance leaders, ex-generals, mercs, smugglers, and colony survivors gathered under flickering halogen lights, General Abrams took the stage. He didn't bring a flag. He brought a name. Adrien Red Jr. is alive. The crowd erupted. Some didn't believe it. Some wept. But all of them listened. Abrams let it settle, let the emotion drag through the room like smoke before speaking again. The Council lied to us. They didn't just kill our people. They bred our pain into a weapon. They used a child, tortured him, tried to erase him, and failed. He stepped back, and from the shadows, Adrien stepped forward. Tall, silent, radiating danger, he didn't give a speech. He dropped the datapad into the central console. The room dimmed, and then the files played. Footage from Zarnus, screams, lab logs, genetic files labeled E-subject human alpha breeds, footage of Council officers discussing biocontrol contingency, how to wipe Earth clean if it got too loud. It played on every screen. Men looked away. Others gritted their teeth. Veterans stood from their seats like they were still in formation. And when it ended, Adrien finally spoke. I'm not here to beg for justice. He paused. I'm here to make them pay. The next morning, Project Hammerfall was initiated. It wasn't a fleet. It wasn't a mission. It was a hunt. Adrien was given full operational control of a repurposed Dreadnought-class warship, the Black Requital, designed for surgical annihilation. No brig, no medbay. No escape pods, just weapons, databanks, and a single reinforced chamber designed to hold Adrien if he ever lost control. He named it after his father's final message, "They think we're broken." The message was painted across the hull in blood-red letters. No insignia, no call sign, just a promise. Adrien's first target, Vorellen Station, where the Council Bioassembly Board had conducted over 300 classified purity experiments on human children. It was buried in an asteroid field, guarded by anti-ship turrets and surrounded by mining drones used to monitor traffic. But the Black Requital didn't come in loud. It came in silent. By the time the station detected it, it was already inside weapons range. Adrien stood on the deck, surrounded by screens filled with target locks. He didn't blink. Fire. The station's outer shell was torn open by plasma lances. No surrender calls, no warnings. Adrien didn't offer mercy. He deployed Spectre assault teams to the core labs. Inside they found the bodies of failed experiments, preserved in stasis, some still alive, cryogenically frozen. One of them was a girl, no older than 8, human, heart still beating, eyes wide when she woke up. Adrien sat beside her in the medroom afterward. She didn't speak, just clung to his arm, trembling. He didn't know what to say. So he just sat. Let her hold on. Meanwhile, the council fractured. Whispers of Red's son spread like rot through their pristine cities. He wasn't supposed to exist, not after Zarnus, not after the Revenant. Chancellor Tren issued a formal kill order, offering a bounty to any species who could bring back Adrien Red Jr.'s head. No one took it, because no one wanted to fight him, because they saw what he did to Vorelin, what he did to everywhere he touched. He didn't just destroy facilities. He turned them into monuments of retribution. Left messages carved into steel, names of the dead, names of the tortured. It wasn't war, it was execution. General Abrams watched the spread from Bastion Station, hands behind his back. We created a force of nature. Ward nodded beside him. Abrams sighed. And it's working. Then he turned, looked Ward in the eyes. But we're not done. He pulled up the final file. Project Nexus. Ward's face hardened. That's real? Oh yeah. And if the Council wakes that, it won't matter how many ships we have. What do we do? Abrams stared at the flashing red file. We send Adrien. That night, Vale met Adrien in the war chamber of the Black Requital. There's one more site, he said. Where? Vale dropped the file. Adrien opened it. Inside was a diagram of a star core, dead black, with gravitational anomalies, and beneath it, Nexus Vault Omega, a council experiment too dangerous to store on a planet, too violent to keep near civilization. A weapon species so unstable that even the Surican refused to speak of it. Humans weren't the only test subjects. Adrien's jaw tensed. Vale nodded. If they get there first, they'll unleash it. Then we get there first, Adrien said. Earth was no longer reacting. It was hunting. And the galaxy? The galaxy now asked a different question. How do you kill something that was born in a cage? And the answer every time was the same. You don't. You run. The Black Requital breached the rim of the Vesker expanse at 0400 hours, Earth Standard Time. No stars shone in this sector, no signals pinged, no civilian traffic dared enter it. Space here was quiet, but not dead. Ahead, buried within the black gravity of a collapsed white dwarf, floated a derelict megastructure encased in obsidian plating. It had no lights, no markings, no active beacon. To the untrained eye, it looked like an abandoned hulk, but Adrien knew better. This was Nexus Vault Omega, the Council's final vault. The one so dangerous, so shameful, even their own internal documentation redacted its existence. Not just in public records, in their own archives. The files Abrams had recovered didn't include blueprints. They only included warnings. Do not engage without fail-safe fleet. Subject Alpha VX3 is cognitively unstable. Any breach protocol must ensure full annihilation, no retrieval allowed. And one final line. This project was never meant to survive. But something inside had, and the Council had just sent a containment fleet to secure it. 17 ships, Vale muttered from the command deck of the Requital. 3 cruisers, 2 dreadnoughts, 12 drones, council colors, heavy radiation signatures. They're already in firing position. Adrien watched the holographic readout silently. We're outnumbered. We always are, he replied, calm. Vale smirked. You got a plan? Adrien nodded once. Open the bay. I'm going in alone. The Spectre crew didn't argue. By now they'd seen what Adrien was capable of. He didn't need squads. He didn't need support. He needed a target, and the vault was exactly that. Adrien boarded a drop pod with a customized pressure suit laced with synaptic dampeners to keep his nervous system from frying during high-velocity entry. He didn't strap in. He didn't pray. He just waited for the green light. Vale's voice cracked over the internal comms. Requital will draw fire and jam signals. Get in, extract intel, and if you can, kill whatever's inside. The light went green. Adrien punched the release. The pod dropped. Hard. The entry was like falling through frozen oil. The vault's outer gravity fields crushed the pod into a slow, grinding descent. Radiation clawed at the hull. Internal alarms screamed, but Adrien never flinched. As the pod tore through the vault's outer plating, its landing stabilizers failed, and it slammed through 2 bulkheads before coming to a jagged stop. Smoke filled the chamber. Silence followed. Then the door blew open, and Adrien stepped out, dragging a pulse rifle and a blade carved from the bones of a Seracan warden. Inside the vault, everything was wrong. The walls weren't steel. They were organic, pulsing with low, rhythmic hums like a distant heartbeat. The air was thick, wet, suffocating. Lights flickered, but not electrically. They pulsed from within the walls, as if the vault itself was alive. Adrien moved slowly. This wasn't a facility. It was a womb. At the first junction, he found the corpses, council guards, ripped apart by something with claws. Not weapons fire, teeth, hands, rage. One body was headless. Another had its spine twisted backward. But there were no signs of gunfire. No breach marks. Whatever had done this, it was still here. Adrien reached the central core after 20 minutes of descent. Every level was darker than the last, every corridor more twisted. And at the bottom, at the very heart of the vault, stood a chamber unlike any he'd seen. It was spherical, floating, lined with containment rings, each one bigger than a cruiser engine. And in the center, held in stasis inside a translucent membrane, floated subject Alpha VX3, human in shape, but not human. Its skin was translucent gray, veined with flickering red filaments. Its face was half melted, half machine. Its spine extended into the fluid like a root system, attached to something buried beneath the chamber. And it was watching him, eyes open, unblinking. It smiled. Adrien raised his rifle. VX3. The creature tilted its head. You are not the council, it said. Its voice was layered, male and female, human and alien, mechanical and raw. No, Adrien replied. I'm their mistake. The thing studied him. You are Red's legacy. Adrien didn't answer. You were meant to die on Vega 6, but they spared you. You became the prototype. Adrien's grip tightened. VX3's face twitched with something that might have been amusement. I am what they wanted to make from you, perfect, controlled, evolved. You look like a failed lab rat. The membrane hissed. VX3's smile faded. You shouldn't have come here. Suddenly, the vault screamed. The walls pulsed with waves of pressure. The fluid around VX3 glowed, and in an instant, the membrane snapped open. The creature dropped. No sound. No warning, just speed. Adrien dove. VX3 moved like lightning, claws ripping through the floor where he stood seconds ago. Its body crackled with energy, absorbing light, distorting gravity. It wasn't just a weapon. It was the end of reason. The fight tore through the chamber. Adrien fired burst after burst, high-density plasma slugs, ion rounds, incendiary shells. But VX3 kept coming. It didn't bleed, it didn't slow, it adapted. And when it hit back, Adrien felt it. A single strike sent him flying across the chamber, slamming into a support beam with a sickening crack. His ribs shattered, but he stood, bleeding from his mouth, gripping his blade. VX3 stepped forward. "You were made to be broken." Adrien spat blood. "So were you." He lunged, not with a weapon, but with rage. The blade met VX3's shoulder and dug in deep. The creature shrieked, not in pain, but in surprise. It hadn't expected a fight. Not from another experiment. Not from a human. Adrien pressed in, snarling, pushing the blade through, and triggered the failsafe buried inside the hilt. A microcore explosion detonated point blank. The chamber lit up like a dying sun. When the smoke cleared, half of VX3's torso was gone. But it was still moving, still crawling. Adrien stumbled, blood pouring from his mouth, vision fading. His suit alarm screamed, organ failure, fractured spine, bleeding out. He could barely stand. But as VX3 lunged again, Adrien caught it by the neck and whispered, "You're not better. You're just what they feared." Then he slammed VX3 into the core conduit and overloaded the entire system. On the Black Requital, Vale watched the vault's signal vanish in a burst of light. The crew went silent. No comms from Adrien, no escape signal, nothing. Vale didn't speak for several minutes. Then he turned. "Log it." "Sir." "Status. Vault Omega neutralized." But deep within the wreckage, buried under molten alloy and shattered memory banks, a broken pressure suit twitched, Adrien's fingers curled. Barely. And a voice crackled in his ear. "You're not done yet." They thought he was dead. They thought Nexus Vault Omega had consumed him. That the blast, the fall, the pressure, the gravity well, all of it had finally crushed Adrien Red Jr. under the weight of his own defiance. For 6 days, the galaxy whispered rumors. He didn't make it. The vault collapsed on him. VX3 dragged him into the dark. The Black Requital left without him. The council celebrated in private rooms, clinking glasses with nervous smiles, and quietly purging files they swore never existed. And Earth mourned. General Abrams stood before a silent crowd on Mars, delivering the words he'd prayed he wouldn't need to speak. Adrien Red Jr. didn't die in a cage. He died finishing what his father started. The resistance banners flew at half-mast. The Spectre fleets went quiet. For the first time in this war, the fire dimmed. And then, the signal came. It was faint, nearly static, buried in quantum noise. But there it was. 3 words, carved into the code, transmitted from a wreckage floating just outside the vault's debris field. "I'm not done." Inside the medcore of the Black Requital, Adrien lay broken. Bone fractures, collapsed lung, shredded nerves. But alive. Barely. The Spectre med team did what they could. Nanofiber grafts, cortical stabilizers, even a prototype neural mesh pulled from a stolen council crate. But he'd never walk the same again. He shouldn't have even survived. And yet, by day 3, he sat up on his own. By day 4, he was walking the deck. Slowly, silently. A ghost who refused to die. Vale approached him on the bridge. No salute, just a nod. They know you're still breathing. Adrien's eyes were cold. Good. We've got one shot left, Vale continued. The Council is fractured. Their fleets are turning inward. The Ikari are bailing. The Sareken are down to 2 strongholds. But we don't have time. If they regroup, we're back in hell. Adrien turned toward the tactical screen. A red mark blinked in the center. Elithera Prime, the Council capital. Vale leaned in. That's where they signed the purging orders, where they greenlit Vega, where they authorized Nexus. Adrien didn't blink. Then that's where they die. Operation Ashfall was launched 48 hours later. It wasn't just Earth anymore. The resistance had grown. Old mining rigs retrofitted into plasma frigates. Civilian transport ships mounted with cannon turrets. Rogue AI warships reprogrammed with one directive: eradicate the Council. And at the front of it all, the Black Requital. Its hull cracked and scorched, its engines howling like beasts, but it flew. And Adrien Red Jr. stood at the helm, wrapped in armor that buzzed with neural reinforcement plates, one arm fully replaced by a high-density exoframe that turned bone into blunt force punishment. He didn't care if he lived. He just wanted to make them feel it. Elithera Prime hung in the void like a monument to arrogance, massive, radiant, lined with golden spires and orbiting defense rings. Its surface gleamed with wealth stolen from 1,000 planets. The Council chambers sat at the top of the tallest tower, a place no outsider had ever reached. Until now. The first wave came in fast. Spectre dreadnoughts smashed through the outer fleet, weapons hammering orbital rings into dust. Council Command scrambled to launch interceptors, but they were slow, fractured, desperate. The Requital didn't slow. It speared through the defensive grid, tore past cruisers and static beams, its autocannons cutting through Sareken formations like butter. Inside, Adrien led the breach team, 15 men, veterans, survivors, monsters in human skin. They landed hard, plasma charges blowing the gates off the Council tower. And then they went floor by floor. No surrender accepted, no prisoners taken. Every shot fired in memory of a child in Vega. Every blade drawn in the name of a name erased from history. Every scream answered by silence and smoke. Inside the Council's sacred chamber, the last of the so-called leaders cowered behind kinetic shields. Chancellor Tren, bleeding from the mouth. High Warden Krex, missing an arm. Ambassador Arulis, clutching a ceremonial dagger like it meant something. Adrien kicked open the final door and walked in with blood dripping from his armor. They stared. One of them whispered, "He's not human." Adrien raised his weapon. "I'm exactly what you made." Krex lunged. Adrien caught him mid-air, slammed him into the table, and crushed his skull with one strike. Tren begged. Adrien shot him in the gut, then again in the throat. Slow, deliberate. Arulis wept, falling to her knees. "No more," she whispered. "Please, we were only following orders." Adrien didn't speak. He stepped forward and drove his blade into her chest, right where her hearts beat. When the chamber fell silent, Adrien stood over the carnage. The ceiling cracked above them. Explosions from the orbital towers sent tremors through the structure. The Council was dead, but it wasn't enough. He activated his comms. "Vale, light it up." The Spectre fleet responded instantly. Kinetic strikes, plasma rain, high-yield fusion torpedoes. Elithera Prime didn't burn. It shattered, cracked apart like a rotted god, collapsing into its own atmosphere. 1 billion watched from orbit, and all of them understood. The age of the Council was over. Hours later, Adrien stood on the fractured bridge of the Requital, watching the planet's remains burn. Vale approached. "It's done." Adrien didn't answer. He just stared. "They'll build statues," Vale said. "Call you a savior." Adrien finally looked at him. "I'm not here to save anyone." Vale nodded. "Then what do we tell them?" Adrien closed his eyes and whispered the words his father spoke before riding the Revenant into history. "Tell them we warned them." Epilogue. Earth rebuilt. But it didn't forget. The Spectre fleet disbanded, its ships buried deep inside solar bunkers, never again to be used unless the stars forgot what Earth was capable of. Adrien Red Jr. disappeared. Some say he died on the Requital, buried beneath the rubble of the Council. Others say he walks among the colonies, silent and watching, waiting, not for peace, but for the next time someone decides Earth is weak. Because the truth is carved into the stars now. Humanity doesn't send warnings. It sends ships, and when the cannons roar, the galaxy listens.